He shielded the alien child with his own body. Now the mother proclaims, "The human is mine." Captain Elias Kor sat in the cockpit of his ship, the stars stretching endlessly before him. The galaxy was supposed to be a place of wonder, but today it felt like a battlefield. Reports had come in of robotic drones attacking a small alien colony in the Ceres sector. Elias' orders were clear: observe and report. But he had always been a man who couldn't stand by when others were in danger. As he guided his ship closer, he saw it: the colony, a small cluster of delicate structures perched on the edge of a rocky ridge. Smoke rose in thin streams, and the faint glow of fires painted the dark landscape in orange. The drones moved efficiently, tearing apart buildings and scaring the colony's inhabitants. Elias' heart pounded. He could have just watched from orbit, completed his mission, and left, but something in him wouldn't allow it. He activated his suit's thrusters and descended toward the chaos. The wind whipped around him as he landed on the edge of the colony, dust and debris swirling in his wake. Through the smoke, he saw a small figure. It was an alien child, no taller than a human toddler, trembling in the open, unable to move. The child's bright eyes reflected terror and confusion. The mechanical drones were closing in, their metal limbs clanking with each step. Without thinking, Elias ran toward the child, his body moving on pure instinct. A section of the damaged building above creaked and shifted. Before the child could even scream, Elias threw himself over the little one. The rubble fell around them and dust filled his lungs. His body absorbed the impact and he felt sharp pain shoot through his shoulder. But he stayed there, shielding the child with his own body. The drones were still coming, their red sensors scanning for movement. When the dust cleared, Elias lifted his head. The child was safe, staring at him with wide, grateful eyes. He reached down slowly, letting the little alien grasp his hand. The child's small fingers clung to him, trusting him completely. From the edge of the smoke, Elias noticed movement. A taller figure emerged, a female alien, her form graceful and strong. Her eyes were fixed on Elias, filled with fear and something else he couldn't quite place. She didn't approach immediately, standing frozen as she watched him protect her child. Elias gave her a small nod, a silent promise that he meant no harm. The drones were still advancing, and Elias knew they couldn't stay there. He lifted the child carefully and ran toward a nearby cluster of rocks for cover. Each step was heavy, his suit's thrusters struggling against the uneven terrain. The child whispered something in their own language, a soft sound that made Elias smile despite the chaos. He reached the rocks just as the drone's scanners passed by. He ducked behind a boulder, heart racing. The child clung to him, shivering but safe. Elias took a deep breath, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. He was no longer just a soldier on a mission, he was a guardian now. "Are you all right?" he asked gently, though he didn't expect an answer in a language he couldn't understand. The child nodded, holding on tighter. Elias could feel their small heartbeat against his chest. The alien mother finally stepped forward, closer this time. She moved slowly, her body tense but cautious. Elias stayed low, showing he wouldn't make a sudden move. She tilted her head, observing him, studying his every action. He realized then that she was trying to understand what kind of being he was. In her eyes, humans must have seemed strange, unpredictable, and yet here he was, risking his life for her child. The wind carried the sound of approaching drones. Elias knew they had little time. He scanned the area and noticed a narrow canyon nearby. It was risky, but it offered a path to safety. He looked at the child, then back at the mother. She seemed to hesitate, torn between fear and the instinct to protect her young. He made a choice. He motioned for the child to follow and began moving toward the canyon. The child obeyed, stepping carefully on the rocky ground. The mother followed at a distance, keeping a wary eye on him. Elias' mind raced as he thought of how to get them all to safety. He needed a plan, and quickly. The canyon was narrow, the walls rising high on either side. Elias knew the drones would have difficulty navigating it, giving them an advantage. As they entered, he used his suit scanners to locate any traps or unstable rocks. He moved deliberately, setting up small diversions with his environment, rolling stones to mislead the drone's sensors, using shadows to hide their movements. The child watched him with wide eyes, occasionally whispering something that made Elias chuckle quietly. Even in the midst of danger, there was a spark of innocence and trust. He realized then that humanity's strength wasn't just in weapons or technology. It was in courage, compassion, and quick thinking. It was in the ability to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. Hours seemed to pass as they moved deeper into the canyon. The drones followed at a distance, unable to navigate the terrain easily. Elias guided the child over rocks, through shallow streams, and around jagged cliffs. He kept glancing back, seeing the mother's cautious progress. She was learning to trust him, even without words. Finally, they reached a hidden area beneath a cliff, sheltered from the wind and the drone's sensors. Elias set the child down carefully and looked around. The mother stepped forward, finally close enough for him to see the gratitude in her eyes. She didn't speak in a language he understood, but her gestures were clear. She was acknowledging him, recognizing his bravery and selflessness. Elias smiled, feeling a warmth spread through him. This was what it meant to be human, to take risks, to stand up for those who couldn't, to show kindness even when danger was near. The child ran to the mother, and she wrapped her arms around them both, finally feeling safe. Elias knew this was only the beginning. The colony was still under threat, and the drones would return. But for now, they were alive. And in that moment, the alien mother saw something in humans that no weapon or technology could convey, a willingness to protect, to care, and to act with honor. Night fell over the canyon, stars twinkling above. Elias sat quietly, watching the child sleep against the mother's chest. He felt a sense of calm, a rare moment of peace in the midst of chaos. The mother finally spoke, her voice soft and melodic. Elias didn't understand the words, but he understood the meaning. It was a promise, a recognition, a bond formed in fire and courage. As the first light of dawn touched the canyon walls, Elias prepared to face whatever came next. He would protect them, no matter the cost. And he knew in his heart that humanity had just made its mark on this alien world, not through conquest, but through bravery, compassion, and honor. The child stirred, looking up at him with trust-filled eyes. Elias reached out, taking the little hand once more. The mother watched, and for the first time he saw a glimmer of admiration in her expression. She didn't just see a human. She saw a protector, a hero, a being worthy of trust. And Elias knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, he would not falter. He had chosen to stand for what was right, to shield the innocent, and to prove that humanity's greatest strength was in its heart. The sun rose slowly over the jagged cliffs of the canyon, painting the rocks in gold and orange. Captain Elias Kor stretched his stiff shoulders and looked at the sleeping child. The small alien's breathing was even, and for a moment, Elias allowed himself to relax, but the peace was fragile. The drones that had attacked the colony were still out there, and the mother had made it clear that they needed protection. Elias had a duty now, not only to survive, but to ensure the safety of the child and the alien colony. The mother, whose name he learned was Lyra through gestures and repeated syllables, was already awake. She had a calm presence, though her eyes constantly scanned the surroundings. Elias watched her, noting how her species' senses seemed sharper than his own. She could hear the faint hum of distant drones, sense vibrations in the ground, and even detect subtle changes in the wind. Humans might not have such extraordinary senses, but Elias had something Lyra could not: ingenuity, adaptability, and courage. He stood and motioned for the child to wake. The little one blinked sleepily and rubbed its eyes before climbing onto Elias' shoulders. Elias laughed softly, feeling the weight of responsibility in a way he had never felt before. "Ready?" he asked, though the child could not respond in words. A soft cooing sound was the only answer. They had to move. Elias scanned the canyon walls and saw a narrow passage leading deeper into the rock formations. It would be dangerous, but the terrain could work to their advantage. The drones were not built to navigate such tight spaces, and Elias knew he could use that. "Follow me closely," he instructed, signaling Lyra with his hand. She nodded and stayed behind him, protective but trusting. The passage was rough, forcing Elias to carefully step over loose stones and uneven ground. The child clung tightly to his shoulders, whispering little alien words that he could not understand but found comforting. The sound reminded him of home, of the people he had once protected in his own world. Protecting this child felt the same, an instinct that went beyond species or language. As they moved, Elias set small traps along the path, rolling stones, shallow pits, and sharp shadows that could mislead the drones. His military training combined with human creativity made the canyon into a maze only he could navigate. The drone's sensors would likely be confused, giving them precious time to escape. Hours passed, and the sun climbed higher. Elias kept checking behind them, scanning for the approaching hum of drone engines. Lyra moved silently beside him, her eyes sharp and her presence reassuring. At one point, she gestured toward a high ledge. Elias followed her gaze and saw a group of drones attempting to flank them. They had been clever, but Elias' human cunning proved superior. Using a fallen boulder, he rolled it into their path, creating a diversion. The drones skidded and crashed into each other, their metallic limbs clanging against the canyon walls. The child giggled, the sound bright and innocent, and Elias felt a warmth in his chest. It was small moments like this that reminded him why he could not stand by. Humans had strength, yes, but also empathy and imagination. They could turn a desperate situation into an opportunity to protect, to outthink, and to survive. As the canyon narrowed, the path became trickier. Elias had to jump over a deep fissure, landing carefully on the other side. He reached back to help Lyra, offering his hand. She hesitated for only a moment before taking it, her trust in him growing with each passing minute. The child hopped down and scurried ahead, surprisingly agile for its size. Elias smiled. Their bond was forming, unspoken but powerful. Suddenly, a loud metallic screech echoed through the canyon. Drones, more than before. They had found the canyon's entrance and were advancing quickly. Elias didn't panic. He assessed the terrain and noticed a ledge above, narrow but climbable. It was risky, but it offered higher ground and a better chance to defend themselves. "Up there," he whispered to Lyra. Quickly, they climbed, using handholds and careful steps. Elias went first, pulling the child up safely, then extended his hand to Lyra. She grasped it tightly, and he helped her onto the ledge. From their vantage point, they could see the drones approaching below, their red sensors scanning the rocks. Elias took a deep breath. This was the moment that would test everything he had learned about human ingenuity. He surveyed the area and saw loose rocks hanging above the drones. Carefully, he dislodged them, creating a small avalanche. The rocks tumbled down the canyon, scattering the drones and damaging several. They reeled and scrambled, their programming struggling to adapt. Elias knew he had bought them precious minutes. "Good work," Lyra whispered, her voice soft but filled with admiration. Elias nodded, silently acknowledging her respect. This was what humans did best. They adapted, they thought, they acted when others hesitated. They could survive in impossible situations, and they could protect those who could not defend themselves. The child clapped its hands, excited by the chaos below, and Elias laughed. Even in danger, there was joy, there was life, there was hope. Humanity had a way of bringing light into the darkest situations, and Elias felt that glow now, guiding him forward. As the drones regrouped, Elias realized they could not stay on the ledge forever. He needed a plan to move them to a truly safe place. He noticed a hidden tunnel leading from the back of the ledge, partially concealed by rock formations. It was narrow but navigable. He pointed toward it, and Lyra understood immediately. They moved cautiously into the tunnel, the child holding Elias' hand while Lyra followed closely behind. The passage was dark, and Elias relied on his suit's sensors to guide them. The drones were still below, but the tunnel's twists and turns would prevent them from following closely. Hours passed, and the tunnel opened into a small underground cavern. Water dripped from the ceiling, and the air was cool and damp. Elias set the child down and knelt, examining the space. It was safe for the moment, a temporary refuge from the relentless threat above. Lyra approached and placed a hand on Elias' shoulder. The gesture was simple, but it carried meaning, gratitude, trust, and respect. Elias met her eyes and nodded. No words were needed. Their bond was growing stronger with each action, each shared moment of survival. The child explored the cavern cautiously, finding small puddles and rocks to play with. Elias watched, smiling. He had protected the child, yes, but in doing so, he had also proven something to the alien mother. Humans could be brave, selfless, and clever. They could act without hesitation to protect life, even when the odds were against them. Night fell over the cavern, and the stars were visible through cracks in the rock ceiling. Elias sat quietly, the child curled against him, Lyra nearby. He thought about the colony above, still under threat, and the work that lay ahead. But for now, they were alive and they were together. That was enough to give him hope. In the darkness, he could sense Lyra studying him. She did not speak, but her eyes told him everything he needed to know. She had seen humanity at its best, not through weapons or machines, but through courage, intelligence, and compassion. Elias had shielded her child with his own body, and in doing so, he had earned her trust. The child stirred, making soft sounds in its alien language. Elias reached out, holding its small hand. Lyra watched silently, a hint of a smile on her face. For the first time since the attack began, there was peace, a fragile but real moment of calm in the midst of chaos. Elias knew they would face challenges again. The drones would not give up easily, and the colony needed protection. But he also knew that humanity had a way of turning desperation into opportunity, of using intelligence, courage, and heart to overcome even the greatest threats. He looked at Lyra and the child, feeling a deep sense of purpose. He was more than a soldier or a pilot now. He was a protector, a guardian, and in a way, a bridge between species. Humanity had just made its mark here, not through force, but through action, bravery, and the willingness to care for others, no matter how different they might be. As the cavern settled into silence, Elias made a silent promise. He would keep them safe, no matter what came next. He would use every ounce of his skill, every bit of human ingenuity, to ensure that the child and the colony survived. And in doing so, he would show the galaxy the true strength of humanity. The stars above twinkled like distant witnesses to their struggle. Elias felt a sense of connection, not just to this small alien family, but to the universe itself. Humans were capable of greatness, and he intended to prove it, one act of courage at a time. The child yawned and leaned against Elias, tired but unafraid. Lyra knelt beside them, keeping a careful watch. Elias placed a hand on her shoulder, silently reassuring her. Together they would face whatever dangers lay ahead. And in that moment he knew something profound. Humanity was more than just flesh and bone. It was hope, courage, and heart. And as long as he lived, he would carry that truth into every corner of the galaxy. The sun was high above the canyon, casting long shadows across the rocks. Captain Elias' corps stood on the edge of the cavern's entrance, scanning the terrain below. The drones were back, more numerous than before, their red sensors glinting in the sunlight. He could hear their mechanical hum, a relentless sound that had become all too familiar. But Elias did not flinch. He had faced impossible odds before, and he would do so again. This time, Lyra and the child were with him, and he would not let them be harmed. Lyra stood beside him, tense but ready. Her sharp eyes tracked every movement of the drones, her instincts telling her how they would move next. She glanced at Elias, and he could see the admiration in her gaze. He had protected her child twice already, and now he would lead them both through danger once more. Humans, she realized, were unpredictable but courageous. They could see paths others could not, and they acted with a determination that was unlike anything she had known. Elias crouched behind a boulder and motioned for Lyra and the child to do the same. He had to plan carefully. The canyon provided cover, but the drones were fast and intelligent, adapting quickly to any trap. He observed them for a few moments, noting their patterns, then a plan formed in his mind. Humans were clever. They could think creatively, using both environment and ingenuity to survive. He whispered instructions to Lyra, pointing out a narrow ledge that ran above the drone's path. If they could reach it, they would have the advantage of high ground. Lyra nodded, understanding without words. The child, sensing the tension, clung to Elias' hand. He squeezed gently, offering reassurance. They moved quickly, sticking close to the canyon walls. Elias led, scouting the safest path and setting small distractions along the way. A loose rock rolled down a slope, drawing the attention of a pair of drones. They clanged against the canyon walls, momentarily disoriented. Elias smirked. It was a small victory, but every second counted. As they climbed the ledge, the drones noticed them. Red sensors flared, and mechanical limbs began to move toward them. Elias' heart pounded, but he remained calm. Panic would get them killed. He signaled to Lyra to wait for the right moment, and together they timed their movement perfectly. Suddenly, a large drone advanced directly toward them. Elias could see its sensors focusing on the child. Without hesitation, he raised a small device from his suit, a portable EMP emitter. With careful aim, he activated it. A pulse of energy surged outward, disabling the drone temporarily. Its limbs froze, and it collapsed with a metallic thud. The child gasped but remained unharmed, and Lyra's eyes widened in amazement. "Humans," she whispered in awe. Elias only nodded, helping the child across the narrow ledge. They continued their climb, each step measured, each decision calculated. He could hear more drones approaching from behind. Time was short. At the top of the ledge, they reached a natural plateau that overlooked the canyon below. From this height, Elias could see the drones moving strategically, attempting to corner them. He scanned the area and noticed a series of rock formations that could serve as both barriers and traps. Using quick thinking, he pushed several large rocks down, creating obstacles that forced the drones into a bottleneck. They stumbled and collided, their coordination disrupted. The child watched from Elia's side, eyes wide with excitement and trust. He smiled, feeling the bond growing stronger. Lyra stepped closer, placing a hand on his shoulder. She didn't need to speak. The trust between them had deepened through shared danger, through actions that transcended words. She had seen humanity at its best, brave, intelligent, and selfless. But the battle was not over. A large drone, more advanced than the rest, began moving up the canyon, its sensors locked on their position. Elias recognized it immediately. It was faster, stronger, and smarter than the others. This would be the real test of human ingenuity. He studied the terrain carefully. There was a narrow passage leading to a cluster of stalagmites. If they could reach it, the drone would be forced into close quarters, where its size and speed would be a disadvantage. He turned to Lyra, pointing toward the passage. She nodded, understanding the plan instantly. "Stay close," he said, taking the child's hand. They moved quickly but quietly, slipping past rocks and hiding behind natural cover. The drone followed, its sensors scanning, its mechanical limbs clanking. Elia's heart raced, but his mind was calm. He had done this before. Humans could think faster than machines in unpredictable situations, and he would prove it again. When they reached the stalagmites, Elias paused. He assessed the formations, noting how each could be used to block or confuse the drone. He gestured for Lyra to move behind him, keeping the child between them. The drone entered the narrow space, its movements hampered by the tight surroundings. Elias pushed a large rock into the path, forcing it to pivot awkwardly. Sparks flew as metal scraped against stone. Lyra watched, impressed by his quick thinking. She realized that humans had a unique combination of courage, creativity, and adaptability. They could turn disadvantage into opportunity, danger into strategy. Elias moved again, setting another rock to roll down, creating a small avalanche that trapped the drone temporarily. It roared in mechanical frustration, but Elias didn't flinch. The child giggled softly, sensing the excitement and relief. Elias chuckled, ruffling its hair gently. Even in the midst of danger, humans had the ability to find joy and hope. They could inspire those around them, even across species, with bravery and cleverness. The temporary calm gave them a chance to move further along the canyon. Elias led them to a hidden crevice, barely visible from above. It would provide shelter from the drones and a chance to plan their next move. Lyra moved carefully, still cautious but trusting Elias completely. The child followed, holding his hand tightly. Once inside the crevice, Elias examined the area. It was small but secure, with enough space for all three of them to rest for a while. He allowed himself a brief moment to breathe, feeling the tension in his shoulders ease slightly. The child curled up beside him, and Lyra stood nearby, scanning the entrance. They were safe for the moment, but Elias knew this was only a temporary respite. He spoke quietly to Lyra, using gestures and simple words. They needed a plan to protect the colony, to ensure that the child's home was safe. Lyra listened intently, her eyes reflecting admiration and trust. She had seen human courage firsthand, and it had impressed her deeply. As night fell, Elias and Lyra set small traps outside the crevice to alert them if any drones approached. He taught the child to stay close and remain quiet, keeping the little one engaged with simple games to distract from fear. The child laughed softly, leaning against him, and Elias felt a warmth in his chest. Humanity's strength was not just in technology or strategy, but in the ability to protect, nurture, and inspire hope. Hours later, the sound of distant drones reminded them that the danger was not gone. Elias prepared himself, knowing that the next encounter would test them all. But he was confident. Humans could adapt, could think, and could act when others hesitated. They could turn impossible situations into survival. Lyra watched him, understanding now that humans were more than their physical abilities. They had intelligence, bravery, and a heart willing to risk everything for others. Elias had shielded her child with his own body, had led them through danger, and had used his mind and courage to keep them safe. In her eyes, he was not just a human. He was a protector, a hero, and a symbol of hope. The child stirred, looking up at Elias with trust-filled eyes. He smiled, brushing back the little one's hair gently. Lyra stepped closer, placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder. Elias nodded, silently acknowledging the bond between them. They were a team now, united not by words but by actions and trust. The stars above the canyon twinkled like distant witnesses to their struggle. Elias felt a connection not just to the child and Lyra, but to humanity itself. Humans could face overwhelming odds, protect the innocent, and inspire trust through courage and cleverness. And he intended to show that truth to the galaxy, one act of bravery at a time. As the night deepened, Elias kept watch while Lyra and the child rested. He thought about the colony above and the challenges that still lay ahead. He knew the drones would return, and he knew that he would have to face them again. But he also knew that humanity had a strength unlike any other, a combination of intelligence, courage, and heart. The child yawned and leaned against Elias, tired but safe. Lyra watched silently, her eyes reflecting both respect and gratitude. Elias placed a hand on her shoulder, silently promising that he would protect them. Together, they would face whatever dangers came next. And in that moment, Elias felt a deep certainty. Humans were more than flesh and bone. They were hope, ingenuity, and courage. As long as he lived, he would carry that truth into every corner of the galaxy. The first light of dawn filtered through the jagged canyon walls, casting pale gold across the rocky terrain. Captain Elias' corps stood at the edge of the hidden crevice, scanning the horizon. The drones had returned, more numerous and organized than before. He could hear the faint mechanical hum of their engines, a sound that had become all too familiar. But Elias did not flinch. He had led Lyra and the child through danger before, and he would do so again. Humanity's strength was not in numbers or machines alone. It was in courage, creativity, and the will to protect the innocent. Lyra stood beside him, her posture alert but calm. The child clung to Elias' hand, eyes wide but trusting. Elias looked at the pair and felt a surge of determination. He had promised to keep them safe, and he intended to honor that promise. The drones' attack on the colony was relentless, but he would turn the environment to his advantage once more. He surveyed the canyon carefully. The drones were converging toward their position, following predictable paths. Elias noticed a narrow gorge that ran perpendicular to the canyon, forming a natural choke point. He realized immediately that it could be used to their advantage. If he could lure the drones there, they would be forced into a confined space where his strategy and human ingenuity could overwhelm them. "Stay close," he whispered to Lyra and the child. She nodded, understanding the plan immediately. Together, they moved carefully toward the gorge, using rocks and natural cover to avoid detection. Elias placed small obstacles along the path, loose stones and debris that could trip or distract the drones. It was a delicate balance of speed and caution. As they approached the gorge, a large drone appeared ahead, scanning the rocks with its red sensors. Elias held up a hand, signaling the others to stop. He considered his options. The drone was advanced, heavily armored, and much larger than the others. But humans could think faster than machines, adapt to the unexpected, and turn disadvantages into opportunities. He carefully pushed a large boulder toward the drone, causing it to stumble slightly. Sparks flew as its metallic limbs scraped against the rocks. Elias motioned for Lyra to move behind him, keeping the child between them. The drone recovered quickly and charged, its sensors locking onto their movement. Elias sprinted forward, leading the drone toward the narrow gorge. The terrain slowed it down, forcing it to pivot awkwardly. Using his suit's strength and balance, Elias maneuvered skillfully, guiding the child and Lyra safely through the tight passage. As they reached the gorge, he positioned himself behind a large rock, using it as both shield and vantage point. The drone followed, entering the gorge and becoming trapped in the confined space. Elias pushed another boulder into the path, blocking its retreat. Sparks flew as metal scraped against stone, and the drone's movements became erratic. Elias could see Lyra watching, her eyes wide with awe. Humans, she realized, were capable of remarkable bravery and cleverness. They could survive impossible situations and protect those who could not defend themselves. The child giggled softly, sensing the excitement and relief. Elias smiled, feeling the warmth of the bond that had formed between them. It was more than trust, it was respect, gratitude, and a shared understanding. They had faced danger together, and their connection was now unbreakable. But Elias knew the battle was not over. More drones were approaching, and the colony above was still at risk. He needed a plan to neutralize the remaining threat while ensuring the safety of Lyra and the child. He scanned the gorge and noticed natural formations that could serve as traps. Using careful timing, he pushed several rocks into narrow points, creating obstacles that would funnel the drones into a confined area. The drones moved forward, unaware of the traps. Sparks and debris flew as they collided with the rocks, their programming struggling to adapt. Elias led Lyra and the child to a higher ledge, giving them a clear view of the gorge below. From this vantage point, he could coordinate the final stage of his plan. He took a deep breath and activated a portable EMP device. The pulse surged through the gorge, temporarily disabling the drone systems. One by one, they collapsed, sparks flying from exposed circuits. Elias had turned the tide of the battle through careful planning, quick thinking, and decisive action. Lyra stepped forward, her eyes filled with admiration. She realized now that humans were more than their physical abilities. They had intelligence, creativity, and the courage to act when others hesitated. Elias had shielded her child, led them through danger, and outsmarted a relentless enemy. He had proven that humanity's greatest strength lay in its heart and mind. The child clapped its hands, delighted by the spectacle. Elias laughed, brushing back the little one's hair gently. Lyra joined him, placing a hand on his shoulder. Her expression conveyed gratitude and respect that words could not capture. She had witnessed humanity at its best, and she would never forget it. As the dust settled, Elias looked at the colony above. It was battered but intact. The remaining alien inhabitants emerged cautiously, checking the damage and their families. Lyra turned to him, speaking softly in her language. Elias did not understand the words, but he could feel the meaning in her tone: thanks, recognition, and something more. She stepped closer and placed her hand over his, a symbolic gesture that transcended language. The child ran to her side, and she held the little one tightly. Then, with a calm but firm voice, she declared in front of the colony, "The human is mine." Elias froze for a moment, understanding immediately. She was not claiming him in any possessive sense, but honoring him. His actions had earned her trust, respect, and gratitude. He had protected her child, led them through danger, and demonstrated the best of humanity. This declaration was her way of acknowledging that bond, a recognition of courage, selflessness, and honor. The colony's inhabitants looked on, some with curiosity, some with admiration. Elias felt a deep sense of satisfaction. Humanity had made its mark not through conquest or domination, but through bravery, intelligence, and compassion. His actions had inspired not only Lyra, but also the entire alien community. He knelt beside the child, letting the little one climb onto his lap. Lyra stood nearby, her presence steady and reassuring. Together, they watched as the colony began to rebuild, small fires being extinguished, walls repaired, and families reunited. The battle was over and life was returning. Elias knew that the galaxy would always be dangerous. There would be more threats, more challenges, and more battles to fight. But he also knew that humanity had a unique strength, a combination of courage, ingenuity, and heart that could overcome any obstacle. Lyra approached him again, speaking softly. Elias smiled, knowing that he understood her meaning even without words. She was offering trust, friendship, and an unspoken promise. Together, they would protect the child and the colony, and perhaps even build a lasting bond between their species. The child yawned, leaning against Elias, and he held the little one close. The warmth of the bond they had formed was stronger than any fear or danger. Lyra knelt beside them, placing a hand on Elias' shoulder once more. It was a gesture of respect, gratitude, and shared purpose. As the sun rose higher, casting light over the canyon, Elias stood and looked at the horizon. The drones were gone, the colony was safe, and he had proven the best qualities of humanity. Courage, compassion, ingenuity, and the willingness to protect the innocent, these were what set humans apart. He turned to Lyra and the child, feeling a profound sense of connection. He had shielded the alien child with his own body, led them through danger, and earned the respect of a species that had once been strangers. Humanity had made its mark on this world, not through destruction, but through heroism, intelligence, and heart. The colony slowly gathered around him, some curious, some admiring. Elias nodded, offering a small smile. He did not need recognition, he had acted because it was right. But he understood that his actions had left an impression. The alien mother's declaration, "The human is mine," was not about possession. It was about respect, trust, and acknowledgement of his humanity. The child clung to him once more, and Elias laughed softly. He looked at Lyra, who nodded in silent agreement. Together they had faced impossible odds and emerged victorious. Humanity had been tested, and it had shone brightly. As the day progressed, Elias helped the colony repair what they could. He worked alongside Lyra, showing techniques and strategies to protect against future threats. The child played nearby, safe and happy. Every action he took demonstrated human courage, intelligence, and selflessness. By evening, the colony had regained a sense of normalcy. Fires were out, walls were patched, and families reunited. Elias stood with Lyra and the child, watching the sun set over the canyon. The sky was painted with orange and pink hues, a beautiful reminder of life and hope. He thought about the journey, the battles, the risks, and the moments of fear. But he also thought about the moments of trust, laughter, and connection. Humanity had a power that went beyond weapons or technology. It was the ability to act with honor, protect the innocent, and inspire hope across worlds. Lyra spoke softly again, placing a hand over his. Elias smiled, understanding the meaning clearly. It was a bond formed in fire and courage, one that would endure long after the battle was over. The child nestled between them, and for the first time in many days, Elias felt true peace. As night fell, stars twinkled above the canyon like distant witnesses. Elias knew that the galaxy would always have challenges, but he also knew that humans could meet them with courage, ingenuity, and heart. Humanity had proven itself, not through dominance, but through heroism, compassion, and selfless action. And as he looked at Lyra and the child, Elias understood something profound. Being human was more than survival. It was about protecting life, building trust, and inspiring hope. And in this alien world, he had done exactly that. The mother, Lyra, stood beside him, her eyes reflecting respect and admiration. The child laughed softly, reaching up to hold his hand. Elias smiled, feeling a warmth that transcended fear, danger, or exhaustion. Humanity had left its mark on the galaxy, and it shone brighter than any weapon or technology ever could. The sun finally set, casting long shadows over the canyon. Elias, Lyra, and the child stood together, a small family forged in courage and trust. Humanity had proven itself again, not through force but through heart, intelligence, and bravery. The galaxy had witnessed it, and in that moment it was clear. Humans were extraordinary. And Captain Elias Core knew that no matter what the future held, he would continue to protect, inspire, and show the best of humanity wherever he went.